2024 was packed with exhilarating whitewater adventures. My season started while there was still snow on the ground and lasted into the fall. I worked on some new skills like poling and river rescue, got more comfortable with my classic Old Town H2 Pro canoe, finally made it down Chase Rapids on the Allagash, and pushed my limits with bigger waves and more technical moves. Here are some of the highlights. The first run of the season hit like a tsunami. The St. George River race usually eases you in and is a good run for beginners. But this year, high flows took us by surprise and sobering rapids kicked in earlier than usual. Usually at this point here, you're just starting to get a few waves leading up to the main drop at the Robbins Mill Bridge. But this year, I was already taking on water and starting to get that sinking feeling. There goes Johnny. By the time I reached the bridge, I realized this race was unlike ones I had done in the past. The spectators were there as usual, but instead of handing it up to the crowd, I was dialed in on picking my best line through the turbulence and stayed focused on the business in front of me. I knew that there was a safety crew stationed after the bridge and expected the water to flatten out after that. Instead, I saw a scene of lost and broken canoes. Multiple submerged boats rushing downstream raised the hair on my neck and punctuated the force that had been unleashed by the spring floods. Instead of slowing down, the rapids kept rolling for over a mile without letting up. If you dumped it here, you were in for a difficult and dangerous swim to a flooded shore and would be lucky to catch your canoe. About half the people who started the race didn't finish in their own boat. And remember, it was freezing outside. In my mind, I was wondering what I should be doing to help, but I couldn't see any people in the water, and I was heavy with water myself. Luckily, there weren't any serious injuries, not counting several canoes that were lost or destroyed. This race took the whole field by surprise, but I had a thoroughly memorable run myself. Almost everywhere I went that summer, I ran into people sharing stories and recounting the legends of St. George 2024. Just a week after the St. George, I invited Ben to join me for his first race on the Passagassawakeag River, and also my first tandem run in ages. A fresh layer of snow and some good Maine cold gave it that extra kick. One of my favorite things about the Passy are the tight turns that require jockeying for position. Boats who don't make their line end up in the bushes. This race was also a first for Ben's parents, who came out along with all the hardy fans to see the action from the snowy shoreline below the Rollerson Bridge. It looked like something might be hanging down from this bridge. As I got closer, I saw it was an Easter egg on a string. Got it! Despite the icy conditions and lack of experience, it was a clean run with some close maneuvering that tested us in those tight turns. We performed well for a rookie team, and it was a great first race memory for Ben. When I found out that Kyle was leading a Kingsbury stream run with the Penobscot Paddle and Chowder Society, I couldn't pass it up. I'd never paddled Kingsbury before, and with its Class 4 sections, anticipation was high. Luckily, the flows that had been raging in days beforehand came down to a more manageable 1500 CFS by the time we hit the water. I don't know the name of this rapid, but the team warned me it was a big one. They gave me some tips and then I shoved off and charged at it. Its tractor beam pulled hard toward the rock on the right and then released me over the horizon, where I landed and paused for a second to wait for my stomach to catch back up. I was warned that the only safe place to run the rapid under Cole's Corner Bridge was on the left. Turns out that was very good advice. Fresh off my successful St. George experience, I felt ready for a step up in my H2 Pro, but passed on the two biggest rapids just to be safe, but it was so cool seeing Kyle nail it in his Ocoee. We had a blast on the wave trains and surf spots on Kingsbury Stream, and I got to meet some new paddlers. We ended our day with a grand finale drop at Weymouth Falls, named after friends of PPCS who owned land along this spot, but have since passed on. Not the best technique, but I made it. The Carrabassett River between Kingfield and New Portland is a favorite early season run for me. It's close to where my mom grew up and it's the first place I ever took my wife canoeing. So I was a proud dad and just a little nervous when my son agreed to take his first whitewater run with me in our matching Old Town Camper canoes. This was a more relaxed trip, so our pup Oakley was able to join us for her first canoe trip of the year. She's getting more relaxed about being on the water and always enjoys an adventure. This was good practice for longer trips we had planned later in the summer. I love the Carrabassett because it has just enough excitement to keep you on your toes, but is a decent place for a beginner to work on reading water, making turns, and dodging rocks. One of the parts I enjoy most about this trip is pulling up under the historic wire bridge in New Portland. It's the only suspension bridge like this built in the 1800s that is still standing. In fact, you can still drive over it, which is a thrill of its own when you feel the deck bounce under you. We stopped at the park under the bridge for a relaxing shoreside lunch and watched the locals pan for gold in the river. Just when I thought racing season was over and I would turn to more leisurely fun runs, we spontaneously decided to take a road trip to Vermont for the Peavine Whitewater race on the White River. Lower water levels meant more bumping and grinding and fewer big drops, but it was still a lively run with beautiful clear water and scenic hillsides. This was probably the biggest drop, and it felt more like a slide down the rocks. It can make you feel special in an open canoe when so many people race kayaks. But then you run into a stand-up paddleboarder like this guy and you realize who the real rock star is. I haven't used a stand-up paddleboard many times, but I was inspired to give it a try in a Sups and Pups flatwater race later in the summer where Oakley and I came in third place. But honestly, we were lucky to finish standing up. Meeting new paddlers and reconnecting with familiar faces from Maine and other parts of New England made our trip to Vermont a memorable adventure. Even Oakley got to meet a new friend, a donkey named Cowboy, who lived out behind our campsite. Millinocket Stream is a special place as the home of the Millinocket Extreme Canoe Race, and I've been lucky enough to paddle it since the race began in 2022. I love the area and now make it a full weekend event, breathing in that crisp Maine mountain air and getting in some extra runs. I made another video I hope you'll check out that describes how this race was founded out of an effort to create more recreational opportunities on Millinocket Stream. It's a success story that was made possible by a local whitewater guide, the local Outdoor Sport Institute, and the dam operator who agreed to release the water needed for the race. This year I joined a group of boaters from the race safety crew for a pre-race run. This was a group of experienced whitewater boaters, more experienced than me, but they hadn't paddled Millinocket Stream before, so I got to share my knowledge and take them on a thrilling late afternoon run through the Turtle Pit. It was perfection. Turtle Pit Rapid is almost a mile long and doesn't let up. This is one of my favorite parts and causes problems for many boats early in the set. The pillow in the middle makes you want to go left until you see that big boulder near shore. It takes a quick move back to the right and then a cross draw to straighten out. Look at this awesomeness. If you made it this far upright and you're not swamped yet, then the rest is easy. That is, as long as you choose a route that avoids the big pour over hogging the middle of the river. This trip, I decided to make my way to the right side, where there is a clean route you can ride to avoid midstream boulders, and then you need to swing it around to avoid hitting Photographer's Rock broadside, and then be prepared to straighten it back out and keep on going. The next day I was back on Millinocket Stream for race day. We had blue skies, a 640 CFS Goldilocks release, and plenty of boisterous spectators cheering encouragement from the banks. It brought a big smile to my face when I heard the safety crew cheering for me by name. The race had all the big waves and technical challenges I love, minus the train wrecks of previous years. This was an experienced field of racers who really got at it for some extreme fun. One of my favorite memories of 2024 was paddling through the lower Turtle Pit Rapid alongside Ben, a faster racer who snagged first place in his category for the season. My first 2024 trip to the Dead River felt like redemption after a rough go last year. This time it was me helping out another boater after an upset at Spencer Rip. Cody made a few nice rolls before he finally abandoned ship. Over 20 boats showed up for the 80s throwback cruise weekend with the Penobscot Paddle and Chowder Society, and that helped create a festive atmosphere. But no one was more festive than our trip leader, Kyle, who showed off by navigating his classic aluminum canoe through rapids while standing up. It was hard to choose which highlights to include because there are just so many cool sections on the Dead River. Hayden's, Mile Long, and Upper and Lower Poplar are particularly long and intimidating, but you just can't beat the rush. The Dead is a challenge at any flow, but for this trip it was a more reasonable 1800 CFS. I had to stop frequently to bail out my canoe, but otherwise it was a clean run where I managed to stay upright and even assist a few other boaters. It helped build my confidence, and it all came together for a really great day on the water. Oakley was back in the boat for a family trip down the Allagash, starting with the legendary Chase Rapids. A lot of folks struggle here, especially when weighed down with gear, but we shuttled most of our supplies and tackled these barely Class 1 rapids with enthusiasm. I might have been overly confident though. We ended up bumping and grinding down the rapids with all the finesse of rock-kissing rookies. Even though it wasn't the most exciting whitewater or our most elegant run, getting underway on such a legendary trip in the fabled Allagash with my family was a major highlight of the summer. A couple weeks later, I was back to the Forks for the PPCS summer picnic. We took some time to work on our river rescue skills, an important commitment we make to our fellow paddlers. The following day, I ran the Dead River in the H2 Pro again, this time with a higher 2400 CFS release. The day started out great, and I was full of anticipation going through those first waves at Spencer. Doing runs with the Penobscot Paddle and Chowder Society gives you a chance to observe some of the most talented boaters and legends in the Maine whitewater scene. Alan, in the stern of this ducky, has been part of the club since it was founded in 1969. It's inspiring to see him out here living a life of adventure well into his 80s. David's parents were also longtime members, and they must have taught him a thing or two. This is him skillfully shooting past me in Hayden's. I was in control and high on a summer vibe, so on this trip I braved to go through the Elephant Rock Chute for the first time. But relentless bailing was wearing me out and making me jealous of the lucky few boaters who have bilge pumps. I got so tired of pulling over to bail that at Upper Poplar I ignored advice and went too far right in an effort to stay out of the big waves. Instead, I ended up pinched in some sneaky rocks where I was popped out of my boat with no warning. After an eye-opening swim, the PPCS team reunited me with my boat. There is no escape from the Dead, so there was little choice but to jump back in the saddle and continue on with Big Poplar. It was an exciting day, but also the kind of day where I was really pushing the limits of my abilities. The PPCS Summer Picnic Fun continued early in the next morning on the Kennebec River, where a small group of us ran the gorge at a low fish flow before the commercial rafting release began. We still found some fun drops, and the low morning sunlight added drama to the fascinating geology that makes up the gorge. We got to see the rocks that make up well-known features like Big Mama and Magic Falls. Although the flow was reasonable, there were still some pushy currents that tested me, and I got hung up on rocks too many times. It was the kind of run that makes you want to come back and try again. I had been having so much fun in the Forks that I convinced my friend Derek to let me tag along on a couple trips with him and his daughter on their Cataraft. First, we tackled the Dead River, where the release was planned to be 2,400 CFS, but due to recent rain had swollen to over 4,000 CFS. It's a good thing I wasn't in my open canoe, because that wouldn't have been fun at all. But it was perfect for the Cataraft, which provides a stable and comfortable ride through the chaos, while Big D does most of the work on the oars. We had giggling, squealing, wave-crashing fun, and it was interesting to get a safer viewpoint on the upper Poplar Rapid I swam last time I went through this way. Big Poplar was really crashing, and we kept on the lookout to avoid the big effing hole. It was a tougher day for some of our fellow PPCS boaters, and we ended up assisting in a couple tense rescues.
Watch it, rock. Rock, come in, take your feet up.
My positivity about the rescue quickly changed to embarrassment when I somersaulted into Big Poplar. But after my last swim down the Dead, I was motivated to quickly get myself back onto the raft. After a night camping in the Maine wilderness, the three of us took the Cataraft for a 5,000 CFS run down the Kennebec River.
Alright, let's go both sides ahead. Let's go get Big Mama. You can see her frothing in front of us right now. Alright, oh boy. Here she is. Big Mama! Wow! Oh, I got wet. And her sisters.
Derek is a whitewater guide and knows this run like the back of his hand, so he kept us updated about what was ahead. I especially liked being able to compare this to the lower flow experience I had a couple weeks earlier.
time. I don't want. Both sides ahead. Big whitewasher. Both sides ahead. Big kahuna's coming. Big kahuna. Yeah. Oh.
He managed to steer us into every good wave on the river and kept us laughing.
Hold on. We went under a bit there.
At Swimmer's Rapid, Kenzie and I jumped out to bounce around in the waves. And when we got back into the raft, I took the oars to work on some new skills and steered us into the action in Black Brook Rapid. It was an awesome weekend to end the summer with the best of friends. Just when I thought my whitewater season was winding down, a friend invited me to paddle the Presumpscot River, which isn't normally known as a whitewater destination. The river is obstructed by several dams, and one of these forms Dundee Pond. But for the first time in over a century, the rapids of Dundee Pond were exposed while the pond was drained for dam repairs. Getting there required several portages and navigating some low water, but it was worth it. The bare lake bed and bedrock river bottom made for a fascinating landscape. The strainers and ancient rapids were a challenge and gave us reason to chuckle at ourselves for awkwardly hitting numerous obstacles on our way down. Here's Uncle John navigating his way past the beach at Dundee Park. The park was closed due to the low water, and here you can really see how low it is, down about 30 feet from normal. Yikes, that was ugly, but it gives me something to work on next year. Now well into October, my last favorite whitewater of 2024 trip was up to Bangor to practice poling in the Penobscot River with a couple of Maine canoe men. Oakley tagged along, always ready for an adventure. Poling up the steady current was an intense workout, and I quickly realized I could use more practice. Still, I managed to make it far enough upstream to catch a nice downstream ride through some fun waves just as daylight faded on the last Swiftwater run of 2024. Reflecting on these adventures, I feel the powerful pull of Maine's rivers even more. Each run has deepened my respect for the water's beauty, its challenges, and the friendships formed along its banks. From crisp spring mornings to the last fading light on autumn waves, these rivers have fortified me and kept me humble, always reminding me that there's more to learn and explore. I'm grateful for every bend in the river, every rapid, and every memory, knowing they'll carry me through the winter and fuel my anticipation for what awaits next year.